Dear friends, we have some breaking news for you. Rishi Sunak has become the Prime Minister of UK of Britain, and joining us live from London is eminent journalist and former editor of BBC Hindi, Shiv Kant. Shiv Kant ji, thank you so much for joining us from London.
Thank you.
And let's start with the breaking news. Rishi Sunak has become the Prime Minister of Britain, and he's the first Indian origin Prime Minister, the first Hindu Prime Minister. How historic is this moment? Looking at, if we just look at recent history, looking at that, how historic is this moment?
Well, from many perspectives, internationally, if you look at it, Rishi Sunak would be the first Hindu or Asian Prime Minister of a country who is a member of United Nations Security Council. So essentially, it's these big five powers. One of the oldest and most eminent power used to be Britain. Now, of course, everyone knows America. But to be a prime minister of Britain is a big feat. And secondly, he would be the youngest British prime minister over a century. He's just 42 years old. And his career path is, dream come true. He's basically elected as an MP from York. Um, it's a small town in northern England in 2015, and this is his second term as an MP. And within that span of 7 years, he became first Treasury Secretary, and then he became Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is the second highest position in Britain, political position. And his record of being Chancellor of Exchequer for 2 years during the worst period in modern memory of Britain and entire Europe, the COVID, and after COVID, it's Ukraine war, all sorts of other problems. And he basically tried to sail through those difficulties. Uh, that record stood out. But when it came to Tory party members and Tory party, that's Conservative Party, ruling party of Britain, Conservative Party parliamentarians, there was a clear divide. Tory party members favored more sort of white, youngish face, and that was obvious when he could not muster enough support there. But
Mhm.
even when Liz Truss and he, those in the previous contest,
Mhm.
um, he almost won full support of MPs, but he
Mhm.
could not muster support from the members of the party.
Mhm.
So this time, the real test was whether he would be able to win in the parliament itself. That would
Mhm.
secure him his place, or they will have to go again to the members, and that would have been a disaster. So he managed to garner support of 210 MPs. That was on record, and within hours, the support his adversary Penny Mordaunt had. She was claiming support of 95, 97 MPs. It collapsed, and she finally threw the towel, and he was declared unopposed. So it's a sort of sweet victory for him. It's a Diwali day. He's a practicing Hindu, and he likes to, light candles and, share Indian sweets with his friends and supporters. So I'm sure he would be able to do it next time, not this time, because this time he can't enter Downing Street till tomorrow. Tomorrow is the great day, a big day for him, when
Yeah.
he would go and visit King Charles III, and
Mhm.
he would sort of officially give him the nod to take over and form his government, and then he'll come and enter the Downing Street. After that, he can light candles. So it's a big moment for him, for Indian community in this country. It
Yeah.
was a big glass ceiling. It's the first time an Asian has become prime minister of this country, and I think it's the first Asian who has become prime minister of any country in Europe.
Yeah.
Essentially, there have been mixed race prime ministers of Ireland and of Portugal, but they
Yeah.
were sort of mixed race. So either mother was from India or father was from India, but his entire parentage comes from Punjab and Delhi. So, and he's a practicing Hindu. So, in real terms, he's the first Indian who takes pride of being Indian, becoming prime minister of this big country.
Yeah, and I remember, sir, that when Prime Minister Modi was giving a speech in Wembley, when he was being introduced by that time the Prime Minister of UK, David Cameron, he mentioned that we may very soon have an Indian origin Prime Minister of Britain. At that point of time, could you fathom that it could happen so soon?
No, not at all. Essentially, even now, people were very skeptical, and especially skeptical if the contest would have gone to party members, it would have been probably a different story. But fortunately, it stayed within the parliament. And I don't know what happened over the last 24 hours. More and more MPs, most of the stalwarts who were backing Penny Mordaunt, and there are four or five factions, within Tory party.
Yeah.
Um, Parties of Europe and Britain are not like parties of India. In India, parties behave like communist parties, the Chinese Communist Party or erstwhile Soviet Union Communist Party. There, whatever leader says is the last word. No member of parliament would dare to raise voice, let alone, rebel against leadership or, question any big, big ticket policy of the prime minister, of the leader of the party. But
Yeah,
here,
and
things
you can do that, but you may get
make it
expelled from party or lose your
yeah,
position of power. It can be
yeah,
done, but yeah, there are consequences. Yeah,
yeah.
there could be
Generally, it doesn't happen. So
consequences.
here, parties have factions. Parties, these are called broad church parties. So
Mm,
essentially, they represent different, types of opinion from different walks of life. Uh,
mm,
it is like Congress used to be when when India became independent in 1950s.
mm,
Congress used to represent, socialists and capitalists, Gandhians, and people who represented big landowners and laborers and all sorts of people. Now parties have become very specialized, one family groups and all that. So
mm,
here parties are still in their democratic form,
mm.
where people can speak their mind, they can rebel, they can question the policies, and that's what was happening a lot in the last 2 or 3 years in the Conservative Party. They were being almost torn apart, especially after Brexit. So in this climate, to be able to gather support of most of the party right now, if you see, barring maybe a dozens of MPs here and there, most
Mm.
of the MPs are united behind Rishi Sunak. So there is a big hope, and I mean, he has got big challenges as well. He has to deliver big.
Yeah, and as a person of Indian origin living in the United Kingdom, what are your feelings, and generally, what is the community feeling there?
Community is feeling very jubilant. Community was feeling a bit battered, after what happened in Leicester Square. The people were sort of under siege mentality. Extreme elements are raising their heads and all sorts of things. But now, this victory would sort of uh, raise new hopes in Indian community. Um, I mean, there is a contrast as well. In Labour Party, generally, the Indian community in Britain, they are supporters of Labour Party. That's There is a history behind it, because when they came after or during the partition, they came as workers, as factory workers or factory laborers. So, and the Labour Party was the natural party for them to join, and they used to represent them. But over the years, Indian community worked very hard, and they sort of prospered. They
Mhm,
became party of business, party of enterprise, party of highly qualified people.
mhm,
So slowly they started drifting towards Liberal Party and Conservative Party. So now Indian community is quite divided.
mhm.
Many of them support Conservative Party. Many of them still support the Labour Party. But Labour Party has let Indian community down in a way that very few people of Indian origin are commanding, leading positions within the Labour Party. Labour Party hasn't been able to even elect a woman leader, or let alone the Prime Minister of the Labour Party. And still there is no Indian to name who could become leader of the Labour Party. But Conservatives, to give credit to them, they have managed to sort of produce one or two leading personalities. Rishi Sunak is one of them. Preeti Patel was the Home Secretary. Before that, Suela Braverman was the Home Secretary. So Indians have been thriving within Conservative Party, and they continue to rise, which is a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah, and just from a historical context, I mean, of course, Rishi Sunak has become the prime minister. I mean, the Conservative Party really didn't focus on his, origin and things like that. He's, in a sense, just another leader. But symbolically speaking, I mean, 75 years, Shivkanji, 75 years from what Winston Churchill, the comments that he made to this day. I mean, how big is that?
It's quite big, really. The way actually India has changed slow. I mean, change in India is slower in this regard than change in this country. This country, and especially this party. This is a 188-year-old party, one of the
Mhm,
most successful political parties in the world,
mhm,
and the most traditional party who espouse traditional values. And
mhm.
to have such a change within the Conservative Party is fantastic. It's basically I don't see any other parallel in the world. Not in America, not in Europe, not even in India. We are still not ready to elect a leader of foreign origin in India. So there will be a big debate about it. There has been a big debate about it, but this country has done it,
Yeah.
which means, if electorate is educated, if people can think, and plan and digest the economic factors. It's basically that's why Kautilya used to call politics as economics, basically. So, and Clinton's famous phrase, "It's all economy, stupid." So, what Conservative Party looked in Rishi Sunak probably is his economic skill, his budgetary skill, his clear focus thinking. He's laser sharp. When in question answers, his answers are absolutely print ready. So in most of the time, and he is a former sort of partner of Goldman Sachs, basically, one of the best firms, economic firms in the world. So it's a quality of the person, and policies of the person, and clear vision. That's what attracted so many people, and that's why he is where he is.
Yeah, and just to intervene there, sir, I think Rishi Sunak, I think, was born in Britain, so I think in that sense he is a Britisher, irrespective of his
Of
origin.
course, of course, of
Yeah,
course. He was.
in the sense that he's not a foreigner in that sense. So I think India, whether India can elect someone of who is Indian born but of foreign ancestry is a question we will know in the future. But I think I just thought that I'll make that distinction that he is actually a British born
Very well.
citizen. But would you say draw parallels when President Obama became America's president, and to this in a certain way, because it's not just about him being a person of a different ancestry than Anglo-Saxon, but the fact that India got independence from British just 75 years ago. So they were a colonial power who were ruling over India. In that sense, it's not just about him being someone of different ancestry than Anglo-Saxons. I think there is probably the glass ceiling is broken not just for someone of Indian ancestry, but I think for a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, you can talk about both of them in the same context, but I mean, the parallel would be taking things a bit too far because, there you have the history of slavery. Here in India, of course, they were rulers and they used to treat, Indians as second class citizens. But, slavery was much more cruel and it's a totally different thing. So, that way, Indians and a particular class of Indians always commanded respect within the gentry of British people. Even, British ruled India with the help of Indians. So essentially, all those Maharajas and the big officers and big police officers, they were all Indians. The police force was Indian mostly, and
Mhm.
the army was mostly Indian. So they were ruling India because of their sort of skills of dividing and their skills of sort of commanding people. They could command so many people, such a large population. Otherwise, you know, they were not treating, or they didn't have a feeling of like whites used to have feeling towards blacks. So that distinction wasn't there. So
Mhm.
yeah, we can talk about both of them, Obama and Rishi Sunak, in the same context. But
Mhm.
yeah, there's a degree of difference.
Yeah, there's a degree, but still one could say, but it was still a colonial power ruling over
Yes, of course.
India. So maybe the degree may be different, but still that power imbalance was, I would say, there. And issue all issues that come with it. So in that context, how symbolically
And
how
it's, no, it's
important it is.
It's not only Rishi Sunak as an individual, it's basically how stature of India has grown internationally. So we can't ignore that. So in the economic power of India, the soft power of India has risen, and may be it Britain or Canada or any other European country, they can't ignore it. So it's a fact, and somehow, somewhere, there is a recognition of that fact behind this development as well. Um, if India had not progressed the way India did, if India had been like Pakistan or any other developing country, things would have been totally different. So that way, I think that worked, and of course, you can't ignore the individual qualities of the leader himself. Rishi Sunak is Rishi Sunak. In an ideal world, he would be leader anyway. You can't stop him.
Yeah, and I think that also is a point to be made, that the Conservative Party itself has never really harped on his identity in that sense, and he's risen to that position only on the basis of merit. He's risen there on his own, so one has to acknowledge that.
Correct.
Yeah. And Shivkanji, thank you so much for joining with us. And I'm sure that this is a historic moment, especially for the Indian community in Britain. And let's see where this takes us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Definitely, it's a watershed. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.